Welcome to the Eyes of Indigo with your infinitely curious hosts, Iris Carter and Margot Ross Sears. Our show is broadcast live at 9:30 p.m. Wednesdays. Socio-spiritual topics are laced with humor as we discuss weird stuff in a rational way. Learn more about us in our first episode, The Prequel. Shows are recorded and available on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, iTunes, and other aggregators. A keyword searchable index is at iriscarter.com/EOI directory. Share ideas and comments in the program chat or by email. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share our show. Let us know you're here by typing your hello in the comments because we are thrilled to welcome you as we begin another adventure right now.
Hello and welcome. And my name is Iris, and I'm here. Margot is not, but I hope you'll stay with me a few minutes. We're not going to be able to do the show tonight that we had planned, the crystals, rocks, and um, stones show that we had originally planned. So we'll probably put that off till December. Margot's got a family member that was hospitalized this week and is now home. Things are doing better, but she's just got her hands full and didn't feel like she could be here tonight. And I said, there's no way I'm doing the whole show by myself. Got to have somebody to talk with. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm talking to myself, which I do enough on my own without doing it on the show here. However, I thought since we had this interesting thing happen and we were talking about hospital adventures and stuff like that, I thought I would take a few minutes and share some stories about some experiences that I or my family have had in the hospital. I call it haunted stories or whatever you'd like, but there's been some odd things that have happened when people were infirmed. And I saw this funny. If y'all have watched the show before, you know that I like to share funny things. This is a photo that somebody published and said, my daughter pretending to be a ghost at the hospital, probably a poor choice. And it shows a short sheet covered child. So, and Lisa Clark Kine, welcome. And sorry, Margot is, I don't think she's bothering with us, but yeah, sorry she's not with us. Thank you. Yeah, typo. Gotta love autocorrect. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, she would be here, but she's nursing the infirmed and has just had one heck of a week. We talked through the week, and tonight she said, Iris, I just can't. I'm just, and I get it. There's something draining whenever you have a family member in the hospital. It just sucks all the energy out of you, and for all the back and forth that she's had going on. And she made a trip to Greensboro and car broke down, and it was just one thing after another. But yet on the other hand, she kind of let spirit handle it all, and things have worked out in the long run. So we're glad for that. But like I said, we can't do the what we had planned tonight. We'll put that off till December. But I wanted to share, in talking with her, there were some things that I was reminded of, and I can remember my dad was very psychic, but he didn't follow through on it. He was not interested in being psychic. And he had another psychic approach him and say, just out of the blue, because dad managed a drugstore for years. And this guy had walked in and was talking to dad. And he said, oh my God, if I could train you, you would be fantastic. And Dad's like, nope, not interested. No, thank you. He had had enough and didn't want to tap into it any further. And of course, this was back in the 70s. So, people weren't as open as they are now about this stuff. Um, but Dad had a number of heart attacks and a lot of health issues throughout his years on Earth. And I can remember back in the 70s, 80s, him being in the hospital, and um, he was, uh, he would be lucid. We could talk to him, and he knew where he was and what he was doing, and all that stuff. But he would talk about seeing people walk through that weren't really people. And I know at one point he said he was watching TV and the wall behind the TV disappeared and he could just see all these people doing stuff like behind the wall, is the way he put it. And he didn't feel threatened or anything, but it was just really weird, like he was looking into another dimension. And my thought was he probably was. Um, so it would be kind of creepy going in the hospital with him and hearing him tell the stories of things he was seeing and what was real and what wasn't real, even though he was perfectly fine. Um, my grandfather, when he was staying at my parents' home, he was recuperating. This was before he died. He was probably he died when he was 99, and he had hip replacement surgery at age 98. He had had one hip replaced at like 96, and then he fell out of bed and broke the other hip, and he'd never really recouped well from that second surgery. And so mom and dad they ended up calling hospice in and had a hospital bed set up for him downstairs. And as they wanted him to recoup, but he just wasn't getting any better. And so, like I said, hospice came in and was giving him morphine and stuff. And mom was primary caregiver. And she said he would talk about people coming to visit. He kept talking about a little girl that would come, and he would mention family members, or all of a sudden he'd be talking to somebody else, and she'd be going, "Who are you talking to?" And he'd say somebody's name, and that she knew they were dead or whatever. And the problem was, mom and dad's room was upstairs, so mom and dad would go upstairs to go to bed, and they would hear my grandfather talking downstairs, and mom would like, is he calling or is he just talking? Didn't know if he needed something. So I had to go back downstairs and check on him, and no, I'm fine. Okay, go back up. And mom was getting exhausted checking on him or hearing him in the middle of the night talking and that sort of thing. So for Christmas that year, I gave her a baby monitor. I said, here, I thought this would help take care of Papa. And she said, oh, this is great. This will be wonderful. We'll set it up and we'll be able to hear what's going on. They left the baby monitor on one night and said they could not use it anymore because they were hearing both sides of a conversation. They could hear him talking and whoever he was talking to. And they said that was just too weird, and they didn't want to hear the conversations at all, and they'd rather just guess than to hear a disembodied conversation. And the funny thing was, at one point, my grandfather, the way his breathing was, and he was sleeping so much, and all this stuff. Mom said she had a lot of clues that she thought he was getting close to time to um, pass away, and so she was trying to do the thing that we're often told. She patted his hand and said, Daddy, I know, if you need to go, you go on. You don't have to stay here for me. I'll be fine. You go on if you want. His eyes flew open. He said, where the hell would I go? And she said, oh, never mind, and let him, let him, let him be. She said, oh, he wasn't quite as ready as she thought he was. If y'all have any stories of weird things or know anything about, people dying in hospitals and stuff like that, I'm trying to think. There was another one. I've known other friends that have had experiences in hospitals and seen things, and there's an energy. I guess there is so much down energy in hospitals. People are not feeling well, so they're vulnerable. And then you have family members that are mourning or worried or fretting, a lot of negative energy, which I'm sure is a great feeding ground for other negative energies. And so that's going to draw in, and that negative energy is going to multiply. Um, and then I think hospitals made a mistake by making women's hospitals, because now all the babies are in another place, and babies, on one hand, I think, babies kind of bring joy to an otherwise depressing situation, where, but I also see that, babies can maybe vulnerable because they're bright little bundles of energy. Um, but I like the idea. I like to recognize the idea that there's a lot of negative energy. So when I go to visit people at the hospital or whatever, I try to stay positive. And it explains why when I was younger, I didn't realize what I was doing. But thinking back, I think it was a self defense mechanism. I would constantly, because I'd go so much to see my dad because he was in and out of the hospital so much. Whenever I go, I would always try to find something funny to share or to make a joke and make dad laugh, because laughter is the best thing to get rid of negative energy. And laughter heals. Laughter is the best medicine, all that stuff. So and I would have dad laughing. One time he had open heart surgery, and they had to um, go in the side and break his ribs. Or no, I'm sorry, it was lung surgery, and break his ribs. So when they put him back together, he was holding on to a pillow anytime he would cough, and he was just barely able to move. He was in intensive care, hooked up to about 6 IVs. It was a jungle of wires and stuff. And he was laying there, but he was awake and he was talking. And I said, "Well, Dad, I guess that's the IV they're putting the medication in." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, if the medication's going to heal you, what if I just wide open and squeeze the bag so that way you'll get ready faster?" And he started laughing, and he all he could do was hold that pillow and go and trying not to move his stomach because it was hurting so much. But it was awesome to just do something to make him laugh and bring a little bit of joy into that room. I think it confused the nurses too. Let's see what Lisa says. She says, "When my mother was dying, she went into a coma. I left for the evening and my cousin was sitting with her. My mother opened her eyes and started talking to her. She told my cousin that she was floating above the bed looking down on us. In her dying process, she visited two of my nieces to say goodbye." That is lovely, Lisa. And I don't doubt that a bit. Yeah, I've heard of people, like children going in and saying, their grandmother just visited them, and they get a phone call saying grandma just died, or things like that. But to actually get that validation and communication from your mother just before she dies, that is incredible. Um, when my mom was in the hospital, and uh, she had been in the hospital for about a week with sepsis, so infection all over her body. And they were giving her just enough morphine to make her sleep, but she was moving a lot. And in her bed, she did, it was like she would go into a fetal position, but she'd kick all the sheets off and all this stuff. And they couldn't send her back to the nursing home in the condition she was in. And they couldn't call in hospice because they don't do hospice in a nursing home. And it was a really crazy situation. And I said, and they said, they pretty much confirmed she was going to die in a nice way. And I said, so what do we do? You know, you're calling in hospice because you know she's going to die, but I can't take her anywhere. And she's not comfortable here. She's agitated or whatever I can tell. And so they moved her over into a cancer unit where they were more able to deal with patients who were getting ready to die. And I talked her nurse, the main nurse that was there when she was getting transferred. Turns out she was also a hospice nurse. And she said, yeah, I've seen this, you know, and we know exactly what to do. And she told me about during the transfer telling the other nurse, the nurse that was from the other unit, she said, oh yeah, first thing we're going to do is quadruple the morphine. And woman, you know, nurse was going, what? And she said, you're trying to keep people alive when you're over there. We're trying to keep them comfortable so they can die. And she explained that if you if people have that lizard brain where they're going to actively try to stay, their body is going to try to stay alive. They might be ready to go, but their body is going to fight to stay alive. And so that movement and that constant, you know, rolling over or kicking sheets off or whatever is the body fighting. It's not our mind fighting. It's that literal trying to. And she said what we do is we calm the body down enough so that the spirit can leave if they're ready. And I thought that was a really cool way to explain it. And so, and I said, well, how long can she last like this? And she said, oh, she'll be gone by morning. And so I deferred to the nurse's expertise, and I decided to camp out in mom's room. And it was a really nice room in the unit they had moved her in. They had a sofa there where I could um, sleep on the sofa if I wanted. And I stayed up for a while because I was so keyed up. But around 1 o'clock, I guess, in the morning, mom was resting. She was comfortable. And I decided I would try to lay down and get a little bit of sleep. And I woke up like all of a sudden at about 2 a.m. And I was just like wide awake. And I felt agitated. And I was like, well, I could get up and walk around, but I don't feel like getting up and walking around. I just want to get some sleep. And, you know, and then it was like, go get something to drink, go get something to eat. And I'm like, I don't even have change. I'm going to have to go across the street to the main hospital and go to the ATM and get cash and change. And yeah, I just want to go to sleep. And I distinctly heard, go. So I went to the bathroom and I came back in and I sat down and I was like, and it's like, get out. So I just kind of went, okay, I'll get out. You know, I could not, I just, it didn't register with me. So I went and wandered around the hospital for a little while. And I came back about 15, 20 minutes later, and mom's door was closed and the nurses were in there. She had passed away and they were detaching her from everything. And so that I could go in and be with her to say goodbye, more or less. And but they told me, they said, yeah, she passed away while you were gone. And then I was like, oh, that makes sense. Mom wanted me to leave, and she was the one poking at me and telling me to get out. And she didn't want anybody around when she died. So that's people want to go in different ways. So that's kind of cool. But again, if you have any other comments, please leave them. Um, but I'm not going to stay on much longer. I just, you know, wanted to deliver the message. Margot wanted to be here, but I thought I could share a few stories. Um, I know my great aunt took care of my great grandmother when she was infirmed before she passed away, and she was like 102 when she died. So she had been in bed for as long as I could remember. And they would talk, she would talk about a cousin named Andy that came to visit her, and Andy had died as a little boy. And he would come visit her and sit with her until she passed away. Heidi Dorsey, good to see you. She says, that was my mother. She was so agitated. And I literally saw her spirit try to leave her physical body, but it got pulled back in. She was so agitated for weeks. Finally, one of the hospice nurses came in. She sat up and looked at her and said, I'm ready. The nurse said, I know you are. I was with her when she took her last breath. Wow, that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Um, yeah, people get so freaked out about death and dying, and it's they say it's not as bad as you think, or it could possibly imagine. It's literally just a transition. It's like closing your eyes and opening your eyes again. Once you finally decide to go. And there are people, I think my grandfather, he hung on so long because he did not like to not be in control, and he didn't know what to expect, and it was something that he couldn't control and didn't like surprises, and so he hung on as long as he could, and we often joked, he was just too stubborn to die. um but uh he finally let go, and it was hard for my mom because she felt like she was supposed to keep him alive. But yet she knew it was his time to go. See, so people who are taking care of a close family member, that puts them in a tough position when you're going, well, I'm their caretaker and I'm not taking care of them if they die, and that's not true either. Um, um, I don't know if anybody remembers seeing the movie Ghost when Patrick Swayze is in the hospital with he sees his body go, and he's kind of sitting around trying to figure out what to do, and there's an old man there waiting for his wife to die, and they see somebody else die, and they're comparing notes, and I thought, god, how many people really do that, to wander through or see what's going on, and not to mention all the energy that's around each of us and the little entourage we carry wherever we go, where we have spirit guides and angels and different ones that are watching over us, and of course they're doing double duty if we're in the hospital, and they're around, so then you have that much more traffic in a hospital. And Heidi says, when I was beat to death, I remember this. The euphoria, pain-free feeling of being out of the body was amazing. Coming back into the body was the most painful thing I've ever felt, more painful than the beating. Death is not painful. I have heard that, Heidi. Thank you for sharing that. Gosh, I cannot imagine what you went through. Yeah, it's if you decide to stay, are you going to deal with the recovery? And sometimes that's part of our lesson. We learn something from that process, and so when people have accidents or whatever, and they're recovering, and they're going through pain, sometimes it sounds weird, but it's like a choice. They've decided to stay and deal with it and move on, and that whole recovery and living a different kind of life once you're recovered, if it's a loss of limb or a change in lifestyle, or whether you're just trying to recover to the point where you're back the way you were before whatever happened. There's lessons in all of those. And a lot of times people hear the word lesson, like we'll talk about it a lot on this show about, things happen and what do you learn from it and what lessons do you get from it. And we come here to learn lessons. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to teach you a lesson and make you suffer for it. It's not that kind of lesson. It's a lesson in that you're learning something new about yourself and new about life and death and experiences. It's not to teach you something because you've been bad, or teach you a lesson because you deserve to be punished. It's just to have an experience. And Heidi says, yes, it absolutely is a choice to come back. Exactly. Yeah. I've heard, I've talked with other people who've had near death experiences where they were given the option to leave or come back, and and they debate it, and in that time, they think 5, 10, 15 minutes has passed. And as soon as they say, I'm going to stay, they're back right where they left off. And it's like no time had passed. And yeah, I mean, we have choices. It's free will. So you have the choice of determining when you die and when you stay and all that. And um, people that are taken from us suddenly is Heidi agrees. Thank you. Um, it People will say, "Oh, they were gone too soon," or they left too soon, or they were so young, or they did. The way people die, how they choose to die, when they choose to die, is all decisions that they make before they even get here. And they can change that once they're here. They can decide to change that, or they can go with the plan. And sometimes, like when and it's really sad to think about, but like sometimes people come here just to be the person that dies so that those of us living get that experience. Um, you know, Miscarriages are not always about whether the baby's supposed to live or die. It could be that a fetus wanted to experience just that portion of creation. Sometimes they come in because the woman in her soul self wanted to have that type of experience. There was something that she was trying to learn from that or understand from that. Um, Small children who die, it's tragic and it's very sad, and we feel the loss, but at the same time, somebody is getting something out of that. Whether it was the spirit of the child deciding that before they came, whether it was the parents, whoever. When somebody is murdered, that can be something they're paying off karma for, or that they kind of volunteered for their murderer, and maybe they were connected out before this life even existed. Um, they're learning something from the experience. The murderer had to do something to learn an experience and got something from that. It's beyond our comprehension as to all the whys and wherefores, and to put it in our plain and simple terms, it sounds very harsh, but there's so much more to it on such a superior level beyond what we can comprehend. But we can kind of try to explain it in our terms, but then people kind of look at you like you're crazy, like, well, that's stupid, what can you learn from that? No, it's more than that. It's about learning about humanity, learning about why people do things, or what the experience is, or knowing the sorrow, knowing the guilt, things that you might not be able to feel or truly understand in an ethereal state. And that living as a human is a very unique experience. And so we choose to come as humans to experience all that can be. And we don't see the big picture, so we can't understand. And so a lot of people, they do the bargaining with God, and why did this happen, and why did it have to happen to them, and da 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 da. There's no need for all that extended sorrow and hand wringing and unless that's the experience that you asked for and that's what it took to bring it to you. And then you say thank you very much and let it go. It's weird to try to understand that when we think in such a 3D level, but it's very deep. And so I don't want to, I'm rambling now. So anyway, yeah, but lots of weird stuff happen when people die and when they're in the hospital and that sort of thing. So I wanted to share that. Give them Margot's apologies. I'm going to show this real quick. Next week, we're going to talk about energetic contracts, which is kind of cool because what I just talked about is also connected to that. So it was a lead in that I wasn't expecting. That's really cool. And then the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we'll do psychic readings. And then the last Wednesday of this month, we're going to talk about the chaos that a lot of people are experiencing. And they're confused and why are things so chaotic and why is the energy so chaotic and all that stuff. So we're going to talk about that. So next week, join us in talking about energetic contracts. Margot is positive that she'll be back, and I'm going to be positive that she's going to be back. Like I said, her family member's doing much better, and she's planning to return home. The family member's already back where she lives, and Margot's planning to return to her own home at the beach this weekend. So we will definitely plan to see her next Wednesday. I appreciate those of you that came, that stuck with me and listened to my storytelling, and I appreciate the sharing that you did. Lisa says, have a safe week. I appreciate that, Lisa. Y'all do the same. Love having y'all here and appreciate your coming and being participating in this. Don't forget the end of the month is early bird registration ends for our summit conference happening in March, March 21st through the 24th. If you want to learn more about that, go to iriscarter.com. It's the first listing in the menu. Check out that. We're taking registration now. Early bird ends and the price goes up to the regular registration, I think until early February. So hope more of you can join us for that. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye and love to y'all. Namaste.
Thank you for joining the Eyes of Indigo with Iris Carter and Margot Ross Sears. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Music is Arcadia by Kevin MacLeod. Find us at facebook.com/Eyes of Indigo, on YouTube under @Iris Carter Enterprises, and on various podcast aggregators. Copyright 2023 by Iris Carter and Margot Ross Sears.